Hello, I'm Jason Walls here with Interest NZ, and I'm sitting in the newly minted Opposition Leader's office. This, of course, is Simon Bridges. I'll just jump straight into it. What do you think your biggest achievement was when you were in government?
I think the biggest sort of single, if you can bunch it up, achievement was billions of dollars of investment well spent into infrastructure. And that was as Transport Minister primarily. I'm very proud of that. I think we really got New Zealand moving. There's been significant progress on a whole number of public transport, roading and other transportation projects. And just for example, flying into Wellington the other day, flew over Transmission Gully and seeing the fantastic progress on that. Those sort of things I'm very proud of. They really, as I say, got New Zealand moving. And the sort of things I think good government should be doing because they enable growth, productivity, safety, so many things.
And while you were in your tenure as Transport Minister, you did a few of those projects into infrastructure. And so it seems that your tactic when it comes to criticising the opposition, of course, we have the $3 billion infrastructure fund, has been saying things like, this has already been done by our government. What's some of the areas that have already been covered?
Well, I think basically if you look at where we're at with that fund, there's an announcement last Friday about $60 million worth of projects. Not all of them. There was one or two that I think don't stack up. The rail project, they're on the east coast being the main one, but most of those other projects were ones we started. We had done much of the improvement, the approval for. So that's what I meant by that. The worrying thing about all of this is not so much that. I mean, that was really just a repackage and rebranding of what we'd done, and they were enabling projects that are good as far as they go, and I agree with them. The worrying thing I think though is that's 60 odd million, and there's nearly 3 billion left, and we're seeing a lot of signs that this is basically just going to be a slush fund. We see that the independent panel, because I questioned Shane Jones in Parliament last year a lot about this. I said, you've got to have good probity, higher standards here, independent from government. Well, they have set up an independent panel, but actually the people on that, one of them is a donor to both Shane Jones, or has been to both Shane Jones and David Parker, key ministers in this. You've got a New Zealand First List candidate on this so-called independent panel. And what we see, even from last week, is that the focus really is on the regions that are politically important to them. So come back to it, the concerns around this being a political slush fund, being money badly spent on for political reasons, rather than because the projects stack up and are going to enable growth in our regions. And
you were talking about that a little bit in the House today, and what was interesting about that was the fact that you were attacking the government and Shane Jones as well. And Jacinda Ardern, when she came out and she made that speech where she said, look, I'm going to be relentlessly positive, and now she's up against your opposition, and being in opposition, sometimes you have to be relentlessly negative because that's how you get into the headlines, and that's really how you really just shine a light on some of the things that the government are doing. How does that work in the scheme of things? How will you be struggling for cut through? Will it look like you're always on the wrong side? Is that something that you're concerned?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. It's a delicate balance. I don't think we would be overly negative. I think what I would say is 2 or 3 things we've got to do. One of them is, we do have to, actually, it's a constitutional role for opposition to hold a government to account, to probe it, to question it. That makes government better. Actually, I think by doing these things, we're pointing out weaknesses we see, and that should actually make the whole system work better. So I don't apologise for that. Sometimes that will be assertive. My approach, I think, to that tone I'd like to have is firm but fair. We'll oppose the bad stuff, things we think take New Zealand backwards, but be in favour of and support actually good stuff like CPTPP, which is good for trade, good for New Zealand, getting things out and about in the world. But it can't all be that. I think if that's all we did, we would deserve to stay in opposition. I think what's harder, and what you also need to do, is continue to refresh and renew our policy settings and have the best offering, the most exciting offering in terms of our vision and our plans for New Zealand in 2020. There's a lot of work, it's hard yards, but we're up for that.
And so just on those policies, you've said that basically, look, just wait for a couple of weeks until the refresh comes out, and with the reshuffle as well. But are you able to give readers sort of an indication of what your key thing, your key message will be?
Look, I think it's relatively simple. At one level, you say, I've been blessed to inherit a National Party that's in really good stead. It's strong. Its messages, its policies are very good. And the prime one there that isn't going to change is around economic growth. I mentioned infrastructure, all those things, because they are, we understand, I think New Zealanders understand, we're the best at what enables opportunities for New Zealanders. I mean, fundamentally, I think what it means is that New Zealanders have opportunities here rather than thinking their best opportunities by a plane ticket overseas. And we saw those numbers rise under the last Labour government, and that'll be a key test actually whether we see that happen under this government as well. But that said, when I talk about modernising, which I have, I do think there'll be some changes of emphasis, and that's only right. Because we don't just talk about what we've done, but we also need to talk about where we're going, as I said, to have that exciting plan for the 2020s. I've mentioned the environment, and that's, I think, because although we did some great things in government, that goes to the heart of what New Zealanders feel they're about, and they want to know that we care about that, and I think, we want to emphasise that. I think another area is actually we've already been talking about around the regions and small businesses. Again, I think we did great work. If you look back to when we left office, 13 of 15 regions were growing, and actually most of them really strongly. So I'd say they were booming. So we did a good job, but I do think, as you see with this government, immigration coming to the fore, where they're looking to potentially reduce that, certainly what they said they'd do pre-election, employment law changes that are bad for businesses. We need to make sure we're reducing the burdens on small, medium-sized businesses, and that will be another, I think, quite important emphasis and focus for us.
I think it's quite interesting that you mention environment alongside National Party's strong house areas such as small business and regional growth. Why is it that you've taken the stance on environment? Is it what's behind this?
I think two things. Firstly, it's right. I think it's right to protect the environment and do the right thing by it. But secondly, it's just a view of mine. I think the view of the National Party, because we've had the Blue-Greens have been in this space for a very long time, that as New Zealand has changed and evolved, people become more conscious of this. Voters care very passionately about the environment. And we in the National Party pride ourselves on being a broad-based party that reflects the views of our nation. That's why we nearly, even at this last election, after 9 years, nearly 1 and 2 votes. And we want to reflect what New Zealanders believe, and I think this environmentalism and emphasising that is part of doing that.
Did your previous government do enough in terms of the environment?
Yeah, I think we did a lot. I mean, I think we probably don't get enough credit for what we did in relation to biodiversity, battle for our birds, in relation to QNX Ocean Sanctuary, in relation to fresh water and so on, which I know was a political hot potato. But is there room for us in opposition to just be thinking about that even more? To be emphasising a few things with the luxury of the time we've got basically in opposition? Yes, there is.
And it was interesting in your press conference because you mentioned the environment a number of times, and then you were asked about this potentially working with the Green Party in future. Are you signalling to the Greens right now that, look, National Party as it stands would be open to a coalition with the Greens come 3 years' time?
I think outside of the Labour Party, we are open to doing deals, if you want to put it that way, with other parties. We obviously negotiated with New Zealand First the last election. In the end, they went the other way, and so I think with them the question is not, will we go with them? Winston, will you go with us? I think the answer to that is no, but people should be asking him that, particularly in the lead up to the next election, because I think that will limit his appeal if he isn't able to say that. In relation to the Greens specifically, my basic point there is, we could work with the Greens, but personally, in terms of my values and where I see things, I think it would be great if we were dealing with a genuine environment party where those were their top issues, things such as the QNX Ocean Sanctuary that we've progressed, we've put into the ballot and the private members bill process, and they should support. But I don't know if they will. They seem much more interested in supporting a bunch of things from this Labour New Zealand First government, like the Waka Jumping Bill, which I think, particularly if you look at what former Green MPs have said, is pretty disgraceful.
So it almost seems like the Greens might be your only shot in terms of next election, because to get over the line just by yourself is pretty hard. It's never happened, just one party by itself. You potentially would have the support of the ACT Party as well, but do you need to soften your stance to the Greens early on, so you'll be able to win them over at a later date? Is it about that?
It's not about that. That's not the reason I've emphasised the environment. I do it as I say, so I think it's right, and I think it's where New Zealanders are. The broad-based diversity of New Zealanders would care about the environment. In relation to coalitions, I'll just say 2 or 3 things. I mean, firstly, I think the point around coalitions is we do have 2.5 years. We're not going to have all the answers to what is, of course, an issue, always is, because MMP is a drag race, if you like, to 61 seats. We don't have all the answers today. I think the second point is, if you look at the way this government has come about, very unusual circumstances, people will generally say, and of course there's truth in this, well, Winston chose the government. But what is also true is to be in a position that we had the phenomenon people call Jacinda mania, where Labour came up in the polls. So Labour had to be at a level where it was credible for New Zealand First to go to them. So that's a priority for me, internally and national, making sure we're doing the work to be compelling in 2020 and to be a really strong proposition first and foremost before you even worry about partners. Then in relation to partners, all I'd say to you is I can't predict, I don't think anyone can, they can pretend they can, where parties will be, who'll be up, who'll be down in terms of, NZ First, the Greens, whether top with a Māori party or some form of Māori party, whether some other sort of iteration of Conservative party will be there. But obviously we'll be thinking about that and we'll be open to considering the possibilities.
Do you think that New Zealand First will even make it back in 2020?
Well, on current polling, the answer is no, but I wouldn't make predictions about that at this early stage. What I do say, though, is they have badly let down their voters. Whether it's in law and order, it seems that the Justice Minister, that's part of their coalition government, looks to go soft on that, or wanted to go soft on that issue, that serious drug offenders and violent offenders and sexual offenders would be out making communities less safe. That's against all the rhetoric of New Zealand First. Whereas in immigration, we don't seem to be having the slashing that they were clearly talking about when they were talking about, 60,000 fewer migrants every year, or whether it's a number of other issues as well.
Well, that's all we've got time for, but thank you very much for watching, and thank you, Mr. Bridges, and good luck for the next 3 years.
Thank you very much, Jason.